Now, next tonight, a row has erupted over China's proposal to build the biggest foreign embassy in Britain. If it gets a go-ahead, it'll be on a site close to the Tower of London. The Chinese government has handed over $255 million to become the landlord of the historic Royal Mint building. But residents say the site is inappropriate and their lives will be plagued by protests. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
It was once the home of pounds, shillings and pence, but now the former Royal Mint on the edge of the city is set for a new lease of life. China wants to turn the historic site into its new embassy, the biggest in London.
The new embassy will sit in a prominent position close to two of the capital's prime tourist attractions. It's just up the road from Tower Bridge and immediately opposite the Tower of London.
Planning permission is expected to be approved by Tower Hamlets Council on Thursday, but opponents say it's the wrong building in the wrong place.
Any number of tourists come here day in and day out to see Tower Bridge and the Tower of London. What they won't want to see, and indeed we as a country shouldn't want them to see, is a historic building with demonstrators standing outside flying a red flag.
The current Chinese embassy near Oxford Circus has long been a focus for anti-communist regime protesters. This was last night. Mark lives next to Royal Mint Court, where his small garden will be overlooked by the new embassy flats. He's concerned about the disruption from demonstrations.
The area around in front of the embassy is very narrow, and if you get 100 people, it will spill into the road, it will block the roads off.
We think it's inevitable, really, that it will attract protests, because we're seeing what's happening in the last couple of days, and that can only get worse.
The embassy planning application comes at a time of growing concern about the activities of some Chinese state officials. There are reports of unofficial police stations being set up, including 2 in London, to monitor and intimidate Chinese dissidents living here.
What they do is exactly that. They seek out those that have fled or those that have left China, and they try and bring them in to bully them, often with video links back to Beijing or wherever it is, where their families will be sitting at the other end of the camera, where they're being threatened.
In a speech at the Lord Mayor's banquet in the city last night, the Prime Minister underlined the chill in relations between Britain and China.
Now let's be clear, the so-called golden era is over.
ITV News approached the Chinese embassy for a comment, but has had no response. Critics of the embassy scheme have called on the Communities Secretary Michael Gove to step in and halt the proposal. A spokesperson for his department said it was under consideration. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Next, though, an Essex council is facing a financial black hole of almost £500 million after a series of disastrous investments. Conservative-controlled Thurrock Council admitted it was in a grave financial situation and would need a government bailout to avoid going bust. Now there's a risk that council tax will go up and services cut to make up the shortfall. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Across the country, the cost of living crisis is forcing local authorities to tighten their belts. But at Thurrock in Essex, there's a financial crisis of the council's own making. A near £500 million shortfall in its budget is likely to mean big cuts to council services.
I just think we've got a very, very corrupt council.
Someone has to be held accountable. So they need to do that. They need to find out what happened.
We don't have a computer at home. My children go to the library. So if they then get rid of libraries, they've not got a computer.
The scandal has led to a change of leadership at the Tory authority. The chief executive and chief finance officer have been sent home on gardening leave.
But what we do know is they've borrowed huge sums of money, over £1 billion, to invest in what have amounted to get-rich-quick schemes that have failed to deliver.
An internal report for council leaders has concluded this is a grave position, and at this point the council cannot find a way to finance their expenditure.
The council refuses to say how it lost the money because that's the subject of an investigation. But there appear to have been a series of ill-advised investments in solar farms, a loans company which collapsed and an energy technology firm. Total losses, £275 million.
Add the interest charges on borrowed money and the council's financial black hole amounts to £469 million. That dwarfs Slough's predicted deficit of £174 million and Croydon's budget-busting shortfall of £67 million.
How embarrassed are you?
Very.
And what do you say to council taxpayers?
Well, with council taxpayers, the place will continue on to...
Well, how about sorry?
You know, we've already said that before, but I'm here on the recovery process.
Council taxpayers rightly want to know what has gone wrong. At the moment, you don't seem to be able to provide any answers.
What was wrong is coming forward in the second week of January. It won't be today. Is about the size of the problem.
Outside the Thameside complex in Grays, protesters fear the theatre, library and museum will be sacrificed in a fire sale of council assets.
Because that money's been lost now, service is going to be cut, and that's across every service in this borough, and it's going to affect every person who lives in this borough, and that makes me very angry.
The council has been forced to ask the government for a bailout to avoid going bust. Simon Harris, ITV News, Grays.